So as far as where you go after that, you sold the companies and then you started acquisition.com, which is your essentially like big megacorp that's going to hold a portfolio of minority stakes in other companies that have, startups or whatever that have 3 million a year or more in annual revenue up to a certain limit. And you try and grow them from 3 to 50 or 100, or like what is the general range again? And by the way, acquisition.com, is it a C Corp and it holds LLCs or?
No, it's an LLC, actually. But we have gone, I'm actually looking at, anyways, not to get into legal jargon, but it is currently an LLC and it holds LLCs. I think we have a couple S Corps, but it does have interest in LLCs, or that's the way it's structured right now. So deal size, the smallest companies we'll take on is doing 250,000 a month. The biggest company we have right now, yesterday did 320,000. So like, there's a range, you know what I mean, in terms of size of company. So we take them, I would say where we feel very comfortable is going from like 3 to 50. That feels very good to us. Going beyond that, the entire portfolio does over that amount. And I told you that company specifically, but they're not doing 300,000 every day. They're probably closer to 200 a day right now. And so, that's like a $6 million a month company. I don't know even, what is that, 72? Whatever, yeah. So, so we feel good in that range, which I would consider low mid-market.
Okay, and is there like a net profit target you shoot for too when it comes to, like, I know in general you talk about 3 million annual revenue is like your minimum, if you're under that, it's kind of like, that's the ideal minimum scenario. But net profit, like I know these are e-learning companies, so the margin, I'm assuming, is a lot higher. So is there like a target you shoot for in general?
Yeah, the minimum, so it's 3 million with $1 million in profit is kind of like the minimum that we start with. But like, I'm less picky on how much margin they have coming in because we know what we're going to do to move it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'd rather have all the other things in place so that they have the potential. At the end of the day, we're looking for an entrepreneur who's got unimpeachable character, sincere candor, and competitive greatness. We want to see a marketplace where we see the potential to provide lots of value to, and we want to see depth of experience in their ability to fulfill on those promises. And so a lot of times people are, when I see somebody who's like, hey, here's how I made 10K a month with an agency thing, and they never scaled their agency past 10K a month, there's very limited value that they're going to be able to provide to the avatar because they never really did it. And I think a big part of why Gym Lunch was so successful is that we always knew what the next 10 steps were, because we didn't, and if you've ever had this from a mentor perspective, I used to think, I had heard when I was coming up that you should have somebody who's only 1 or 2 steps ahead of you because it's been more recent for them, blah, blah, blah. But I would say the more I've had some weather, or some time under the belt, the more I prefer to have people who are a few steps further ahead, because if you take 2 steps ahead and then you realize that you have to take 10 steps backwards because you did everything wrong, that sucks. And I think that's a lot of the advice that's given out there today, which is why I made the YouTube channel to begin with. So we look for the depth of experience so that we can figure out a way to have to create a premium brand that can command higher profits or prices and then translate to higher profits. But to answer the original question, which is what kind of profit we're looking for the companies or what we think we can get to, I would say the most profitable company we have right now is about 60% net margins.
Jesus.
I would say usually we target around 40.
So when these companies are in growth mode though too, if they're all LLCs with flow through taxation structures and they have 60% net margin or 30%, does that mean that you and Layla just take that hit personally because it flows right up to you and you're I don't know how much active distributions you take from them as they're growing, presumably, I don't know if is it just enough to offset your tax burden, or how does that play in? Because I'm thinking you have no active income from cash cow companies like a Gym Lunch anymore. So now I have these LLCs under me all siphoning up net profit that I'm responsible for, but no other income other than my,
So these businesses are much more the Berkshire Hathaway businesses. They are cash cows, and we optimize for net free cash flow. Obviously we want to grow the companies, but because of the nature of the companies that we choose or that we work with, there's virtually no CapEx. So there's no capital expenses that we have to reinvest to grow the businesses. So we don't have to buy new inventory. We don't have to buy new machinery. We don't have to buy really anything. The only thing we have to spend more money on is talent. But anything that's in this type of business, the talent is getting amplified by the fact that they have some sort of digital products or services or tech-enabled services that enable us to get 10 times more for that person anyway. So anytime we're adding somebody, we're getting 10 times the return to begin with and to start with. So they can cash flow as they grow very well.
Okay, so is there like, do you take distributions at the early stage to offset your tax burden essentially and just?
We take distributions like owners would.
Okay, cool. And as far as like I know you've mentioned you take on e-learning companies preferably because that's kind of like your bread and butter. Like for me, prior to seeing Gym Launch, my experience of seeing e-learning was stuff like Alex Becker, how to make money online, stuff like that. And those like big master classes of how to like start a Shopify store or like whatever. That was my concept of e-learning modern. And then I also saw some of those like, I don't know, I think there's like masterclass.com where they have some expert teach you how to like play the fucking piano or like whatever they're an expert at. Like what do you guys, I've heard you mention hair salon as an example, how to scale a hair salon, I feel like what
dentist, chiropractor, I mean,
is it sort of just like spinning Gym Launch into each different type of business essentially, or like?
So I would say that there's three. I've never actually talked about this, so this is fun. So I would say there's three subcategories within like education. So you've got education for a specific skill, that would be like violin or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I would say there's mass market education around business or income generating skills. So I would say non-income skills, which would be like a B2C consumer education thing. And then there's I would say like B2B2C, which is kind of like biz op, how to make money doing something. And then there's, I would say, kind of niche down expertise, which are more like improvement offers. So it's, you already are a wholesaler, you already are a auto mechanic, you already are a hairstylist, you already are a massage therapist, whatever it is. And if you just do these 22 things, you can make 5 times more money, right? And there are advantages and disadvantages to each of those. We have all 3 of those types within the portfolio. I think that a lot of reason that the space, so right now the space is getting more, I would say, institutional attention. I mean, it's super young still, because they are seeing the tremendous amount of cash flow and scale that these companies are achieving. It's just not, it just hasn't been, it's still wild, wild west. It's still early days. And I think that, the demand for skills is not going anywhere. And I think as formal education has failed many people in their desire to have skills that can equip them to make money, these things aren't going away. And so our bet is on the fact that the players who are the best at their specific skills in terms of teaching and the monetization model that they wrap around it are going to be, I think it is a winner-take-all model, which is if you are the best math teacher should teach math to everyone. And with technology, they can. And so that's kind of how we're structuring what we're making our bets on.
So like hypothetically, if I'm a hair salon or something and I'm looking to like teach people how to scale their business, I assume if I'm looking for a business, for example, locally, I'm probably still gonna go to Google and be like, sushi place near me or hair salon near me. Like, do you stay up to date on like Google algorithm changes yourself? So then when you come in, you can be like, these are the current SEO strategies, or this is the gray hat tactics that you want to be aware of. Like how do you kind of like finagle that? Because obviously you probably don't have the time to stay on top of that shit too. Yeah. So
no, of course not. No, I don't have that. And so I'll kind of walk through the process. So if we're taking a company on who's at 3 million, usually they have some level of product market fit, which is why 3 million is the cutoff. Like if they're below 3 million, like they're still kind of figuring their stuff out. They still don't even have a core team yet. So usually at 3 million, 250 a month, you're doing, you got a core team of like 10 to 20-ish people. You have a consistent acquisition channel. It might not be as high as you want, but it's consistent. It's reliable, right? You're getting customers, month in, month out, right? And so usually at that point, this is where I think a lot of people at that level will make the mistake of saying, oh, I need to just do more marketing. And that's usually not the answer. Usually they need to increase their lifetime value per customer. So we need to, stop losing people in the back end, get the customer experience where it needs to be, make sure that we're tracking the right metrics, get, customer segmentation in place so we can match, the product suite to the desires of the customer and make sure that we're selling the right things to the right people. And so we, pair all that things in. We might have to add some element of recurring to the business. We might peel off things that are consumption versus, continuous, and then price accordingly to that. And so we'll do those things first. And a lot of times we need to hire a handful of people who have experience in those arenas and then put them into the business, right? And this is a big part of formalizing it. And so that alone, without even increasing acquisition, will usually do the first triple. So most times we can triple the first business without even doing anything to the acquisition. The second triple, and we think in triple. So it's like first triple is typically going to be the back end. The second triple will be adding channels of acquisition. And so now at this point, because we have fixed the back end, we have significantly more gross profit per customer that allows us to go to these other channels far more profitably and acquire customers. And so we have more room to make mistakes. We have cash flow to fund the growth, all that kind of stuff. And so if we were helping hair salons, I'm not going to help hair salons. I'm taking somebody who already is the expert in that. So they're up to date on the Google, blah, 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 the map stack and, the best referral strategies and how to partner with, chiropractors to send you hair clients, and, paid ads and whatever, right?
So is this the sort of thing where you would have, like if you had Facebook ads, whatever it is of your acquisition channel, you're trying to drive them into like a click funnel where you then teach them how to scale their business via expert that's at the top with like, that's the whatever business you have is like the gym launch, but for like, I feel I'm just trying to make sure I understand completely. Like,
yeah. So with this hairstylist example, right? So if there's a hairstylist who, let's say her name's Sarah and she's making $4,000 a month and that's her life, right? And so she sees an ad for, Tammy, who's making $20,000 a month cutting hair too. And she's like, well, hot darn, I'd like to make $20,000 a month instead of $4,000. And so, she clicks the thing, she watches a video that's like, okay, it's because they're doing way more, extensions and colors than they are cuts because that's more profitable per hour. That makes sense, but how do I sell that stuff? Well, you can schedule a call and they can walk you through it. Cool, okay, so she schedules a call, walks through it. She says, you know what, it makes sense for me to spend $5,000, which is 1 month, to get to $20,000 every month. The exchange makes sense, cool. So then they would walk her through the strategy, which is like, okay, from here on out, here's how you schedule your time slots. Here's the scripts that you use to get new customers. When you make your Instagram post, this is how you do it. When you set up your Max step, this is how you do it. When you get your referrals, here's the referral script. Here's, you know what I mean? And so you go through all these things, and then piece by piece, they implement each of those kind of golden BBs into the business, and then the business incrementally grows.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand. So it's basically taking existing experts in their space who we're trying to teach, but teaching them how to scale their teaching, essentially.
Correct. It's an education. Right. We're an education company.
Okay. So it's almost similar to like the Alex Becker of like every random niche of, hair salon, whatever niche it is. Okay. Got it. So I can see how that would be like exceptionally profitable. I've considered that model before back in the day when I was trying to look at ways to make money, but like, I don't know, have you ever considered that yourself, doing master classes on entrepreneurship, or is that just like...
Well, I have a YouTube channel. That's my master class, and I don't need to charge for it.
Yeah, that was why I identified with your stuff so much, is because it was the first time I've seen somebody not try to push you into one of those things. It was just like, here's all the fucking info, take from that what you will, sort of thing. So, it's awesome, dude. Yeah, really. So like, as far as when you first come in and find holes to fill, and like you specifically, what do you have, like a meeting every week with each company in your portfolio, or like how do you allocate your time to filling those holes?
Well, we have a team, so it's not just us. So we get people from Harvard Business School and private equity groups who are growing portfolio companies, and we bring them in. So they already have tons of trench experience from what they're doing beforehand. So one of our big things is we try and hire people who've already won an Olympic gold, not who say they can win an Olympic gold. So we want you to, who have already won a gold medal, and just say, cool, just run that race here. And so then they just can recreate the things that they already know. Now, we already have our playbooks too for specifically this size of company. And so the nice thing is that a lot of businesses often have, especially because we're so specific in the types of business that we work with, they have the same problems at the same points. And so just creating the paint by numbers or the money by numbers playbooks for like, okay, here's how we remove the founder from the marketing. Here's how we set up the customer segmentation surveys. Here's how we create the creative cadence for organic. Here's the creative cadence for paid ads. Here's how we pick our messaging buckets on the marketing perspective. Here's how we do compliance, so we can actually make sure that we're not being scammy weirdos, right? And that would just be like marketing, for example. And same thing with sales. It's like, all right, here's our speed to contact. This is how we track, utilization per rep. This is how we do our call reviews. This is what our monthly cadence needs to be for the sales director. This is how these are the ads the sales director needs to run to get the best sales guys. This is the interview cadence. Like it's just business. It's just like this is how you build it, And so in terms of how we allocate it, we look at the whole business and we say just where's the biggest lever here? Because all those things need to get done between now and 100. But which of those things need to be done first? And so a lot of times we only pick 3 big rocks that we're going to focus on, and that'll probably be the first year in making sure that we truly execute those good things. Because a lot of times, if you think about probably even your business or your businesses, you're like, if I just did one of these things for this business by the end of the year, we'd triple. And so it's really being ruthless in our prioritization and just keeping the founders and the leadership teams focused on that one priority. Because if you get that right, you can usually mess up a ton of other stuff and still turn out okay.
Right. So like obviously you have a lot of people on your team who you've vetted and had headhunted or whatever it is who are capable 100%. Of fulfilling these things on your behalf. So where you plug in yourself, obviously right now, a big ROI on your time is building social presence to then establish, the perspective that you're the guy to go to grow these 3 to whatever $1 million companies to the next level. As far as how you plug in directly with the portfolio companies, though, if you have this team under you that is able to facilitate, are you oftentimes trying to find more people that are of that same caliber of your team and you're like interviewing people yourself, or how do you plug in with the portfolio companies exactly?
It's a combination. It's what constraint are the majority of them dealing with that if for some reason we cannot handle, which most of the times we can, but we might say, okay, Layla and I are spending a lot of time on this particular thing. So I think we need somebody who's going to handle this particular slice, right? And so, the benefit, so most businesses go from generalist to specialist over time, right? So it's harder to find the jack of all trades in the beginning, which is usually why the owner does a lot of that in the beginning. And then over time, we replace the headhunting function, which is something that, we replace. If we replace the content creation function, we replace the sales directing function, like all of these, all these pieces. And then in terms of how we interface with them directly, they very much are treated the same way the companies that I owned before selling are treated, which is we treat them like we own them. So, I do everything that I would do for Gym Launch. I do everything that I would have done for Prestige Labs while being the owner, which means that like I'm not going to write ad copy because it's not a good use of anyone's time. Because if I write the ad copy, the business is dependent on me, right? But if I can usually help make or guide strategic decisions, then it absolutely is worth the time. And so for us, we review all the company's data monthly, which is exactly what we do when we own all the companies. We review the data monthly in terms of their financials. We are interacting with them usually on a daily or semi-daily basis from like a messaging back and forth perspective. We have open office hours all the time during the week so that we can hop on to solve specific issues for the portfolio companies. And at the end of the day, like we just make ourselves available. Like as much as it appears that I am extremely active on social, a big part of that is because Caleb and the team make me look a lot cooler than I am. And so the vast majority of my time, I would say, conservatively 80, realistically 90% of my time is spent growing like the portfolio companies. Because they grow, I make more money. So it's like, I don't need more companies. Like Zuckerberg didn't need a side hustle. You know what I mean? Like I can just get a handful of companies that are really good. And that's the Berkshire Hathaway, way. It's just find really good companies and let them grow.
So how many do you have at this point under acquisition.com? And then how many hours do you spend on each one kind of per day?
We spend 8. And then per day, it varies dramatically by what season the business is in.
And do you have like a consolidated communication medium? Like at this point, I have so many fucking threads, dude. There's like a Slack, there's an Upwork, there's group threads, there's text, there's Signal, there's WhatsApp, and I'm like, holy goddamn shit, dude. Yeah. Like
so everyone plays our play our way. And that's part of coming onto acquisition.com. So everyone uses our tech stack for CRM because it pipes into our tech stack. So we can see the data and it gets pushed in real time. So we don't waste all this time aggregating, cleaning data, which is a pain in the butt. So that's a huge one that's streamlined right off the bat. The second thing is from a communication standpoint, everyone's on Slack. And so that's it. Everyone's on Slack. That's the way it works in terms of communication. So in terms of systems, we only use 3. We use Zoom, we use Slack, and we use HubSpot. That's it.
Huh, never used HubSpot. You'd recommend it, presumably. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's more important that you have deep expertise within a CRM than I think the particular CRM you choose. Like a massive company, massive companies use Zoho, massive companies use Salesforce, massive companies use HubSpot.
Yeah.
I think it's less important which one you choose, more so that you are really good at the one that you choose.
Yeah, and as long as you have everything consolidated and you don't go insane in the process. Yeah. So for you, you guys have 8 companies, you said, under acquisition. Was that before you started like your really aggressive rise on social media? Was that at 0, or were you already had
No, I had
some?
I had 3 or 4. I can't remember what timing was. It was either 3 or 4.
And how many more applicants do you have now relative to then?
I mean, I didn't even really have the applicants before were just people who reached out to me that, from the sale or just from industry stuff, whatever they had heard of what we had done. You know what? It's 4. So we had 4. We've only taken on 4 more since this rapid rise.
Okay.
But the thing is it's kind of like what I was saying. I mean, our quote acceptance rate right now is 0.2% of companies that apply. And it's just because we're not in a rush. There's no finish to the race. It's much more like, do we think that we can add a lot of value to these businesses? And if we don't, we just say like, hey, here's what we would do. Not sure if it's a perfect fit. Wish you the best. You know what I mean? And hey, that's why we make all the free stuff. So like, hey, like go use all that if it's not a fit.
And how many companies do you actually end up on a call with to screen versus, because if you have a 0.2% acceptance rate or whatever.
I talked to every one of them.
Really?
No, God, no. I couldn't.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. That's fucking impossible.
Even if I took 1 minute per, it wouldn't make sense.
So do you have like one C-suite guy who just like has a front line? He's like the gates to get through to you or Layla sort of thing?
Yeah. So HubSpot has automated rules in terms of decision making. So there's lots of black and white metrics that we can apply for decision making to the applications that come in, and that'll automatically screen, probably 80% of them.
Wow.
And then from there, the 20% that's remaining, he will probably visually screen another 20% out. So probably get it down to 60, sorry, another 80%. So there are 4% that are left. And then from there, he'll probably talk to those 4%. And then of that 4%, he'll probably push 1% to like a second call. And then at that point, we'd kind of talk about, it's not a sales process. You know what I mean? It's a 90-day process. We do diligence on the company. We talk to their entire leadership team. We want to get a pulse of the company, because otherwise we can't figure out what value we can provide. Like if, you know what I mean? Like if I don't know anything about the company, then how am I going to say, here's all the holes I can fill when they might not have those holes. So it's only when we very clearly understand all these things together and it checks every box that we then move forward. And that's kind of right now the average portfolio company that we have triples their profit within the first 12 months.
Wow.
So like, and to be fair, we pick a tiny itty bitty sliver of a box, which is if you can sing the ABC backwards in Arabic, sitting on one foot and rubbing your head and patting your belly, and you're a $3 million plus education entrepreneur, in a niche or teaches an income skill, then we're your huckleberry. And that's just because I looked at the people who have really good private equity funds, and they niche down for a good reason, because you learn a ton, and the more times we do it, the better we get at it. And so then the more paint by numbers this becomes, so we can just say with more and more confidence and increased certainty and faster decisions that we can get some from point A to point B.
So you mentioned you have screening criteria that screens out 80% of people in HubSpot, but like on your website, for example, you put in your name, your website, email, phone number, annual revenue, annual profit, book a call. Mm-hmm. When you book a call, like how do you get screened above and beyond? Like do you have a bunch of people who just lie on this form, and then how do you?
Well, the button says book a call because it converts better than submit. But the second screen there, if you were to submit, click book a call. In order to book a call, you have to fill out the company intake form, which is like 20 questions.
Okay.
So that's the next thing. So there's 20 questions there that are much more in depth, which is like how many acquisition channels do you have? What percentage are they attributed to? What is your churn right now? What's average price? How many, what's your sales velocity? How many units per month are you selling? And so we get a much better, where are you incorporated out of? How many founders do you have? What's the, all those types of questions that we would want to normally figure out. And those are usually questions that we would ask on a phone call. We just ask them beforehand. And then from there, we can get a really good pulse on the company. Because if we look at somebody's website and and we know what platforms they're advertising on, we can look at their advertising, which is what we'll do. We'll go look at the advertising, we'll look at the stuff. But oftentimes, a lot of people apply and don't meet the black and white metrics. They're like, I'm going to be at 3 million. We're like, well,
Yeah. It's not good enough. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not, and I love the community, and I root for everybody to do it. But it's just because of the nature of, it's a time constraint. You know what I mean? And so there's a reason Warren Buffett has a hard time allocating his capital. It's because there's not that many $100 billion fish that he can spend his money on. Like, he could double his money if he bought $1 million things, but then he would still have 149,999,999 million left to spend. He just couldn't do it time-wise.